All right, we ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Well, I want to thank everyone for making this adjustment here. This is going to be a definite adjustment for me. I enjoy greatly the being able to see faces when we do these meetings, and I'm sad we're not going to be able to do that. But I'm glad that we have this technology to at least be together virtually, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Yeah, thanks
So
very much.
yeah, and it's a tremendous honor and pleasure to be among farmers, and I greatly appreciate all of you. I know you work diligently and hard, and for very little pay or no pay, I think, in probably most situations. So thank you so much for that. And so let's just get started here. I'm going to do a general food regulatory overview.
Yeah,
Um,
great, Mike. If I can take just a moment or two and give a few general announcements.
oh, sorry. Okay, sorry.
That's all right, no problem. Thank everybody for joining us today for the uh, Growing Sales at Farmers Markets webinar series. Particularly today, we're talking about the topic of food safety and the regulatory roadmap for food manufacturers. We're grateful to have Mike Brown from Tennessee Department of Agriculture's Business Development Division joining us as today's instructor. My name is Hal Pepper, and I'm one of the specialists at the Center for Profitable Agriculture, and I'll be serving as the moderator for today's session. And we greatly appreciate the support that's provided by USDA Rural Development, by Tennessee Department of Agriculture, and the Tennessee Association of Farmers Markets to help make this series possible. To help report the impact of this webinar, I'd ask you to complete a very brief online evaluation of the session at the end of today's webinar. The link to the evaluation will be posted in the chat box for you at the end of today's webinar. And even if you've completed this evaluation for one of the previous sessions this week, we need you to complete the evaluation for today's session as well. Just a few housekeeping items. Please, everyone, keep your microphones on mute and your video off during the session. So if you could check that, be sure that your microphone is muted. And if you would now locate the chat box, please type your name and your location into the chat box to help me record attendance. Please note that attendance at all 4 of the webinars this week will fulfill a Tennessee Ag Enhancement Program requirement in the agritourism, fruit and vegetable, and value-added producer diversification sectors. And so we can provide a complete report of attendance to TDA for the Tennessee Ag Enhancement Program, please type in your name as it appears on TDA's list. And if you're joining the session by phone, please let Erica Alexander at TDA know that by emailing her at erica.alexander@tn.gov. You may use the chat box at any time during the session to submit a question to everyone or to me privately. We'll be monitoring the chat box during the presentation, and we'll be periodically updating Mike with your questions and comments. And near the end of the webinar, I will type in the chat box a link to that evaluation form that I mentioned with just a few short questions. So please note that I am recording the session, and I plan to post it online in the event that you'd like to view it again or share it with someone else. We're really excited to have Mike Brown with us today. Mike is a food business consultant with TDA, and he has traveled with us many times, and I've enjoyed that. We, just a couple of weeks ago, were on the road with some farmers market vendor boot camp workshops, and Mike joined us with those. And so he's going to give his presentation that he did at those sessions here on this webinar. Originally, we scheduled a series of face-to-face workshops for market managers for this week, but due to COVID-19, we decided to offer these workshops as a webinar series and make them available to everyone. So Mike's session today will help you understand the rules and regulations for making food products in a home kitchen or a commercial kitchen. And Mike, we're looking forward to your presentation today, and I'll turn it over to you now.
All right, Hal, thanks so much for the intro, and forgive me for jumping the gun there a minute ago. So I didn't know what our protocol was. So thank you for that. I will just go over this, and many of you participants on this webinar could certainly, you've probably seen this presentation enough you could present it. So just a lot of it is going to be duplicate information. Nothing has really changed in the food regulatory world probably in the last several years, with the exception of hemp going crazy and getting into the food and smokable realm and all kinds of topical situations and things like that. So that's the only thing that's very different, and we certainly will discuss hemp. I know that's a hot topic among farmers markets. So I'll take about, well, as long as we need to take here on the regulatory side, and then there's a separate presentation for to go over Pick Tennessee Products Platform and TAEP funding, and also agricultural enterprise funding. So and that'll be in a separate and much shorter presentation than this. So I was able to find, hopefully you can see this laser printer. I'm swirling it around. Can you see that, Hal? Does everybody have that?
Oh yeah, we can see it.
Okay, all right. So I'm just going to leave that up in the corner, and then when we need to point something out, we certainly will do that. So let's just start and let's keep going here. Okay, what we've done from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, we essentially write rules that are connected and referenced back to rules for food manufacturers at the federal level. So let's just talk about the basis for where we get our rules and how we interpret those. You've heard the acronym GMPs. It stands for Good Manufacturing Practices. Everything that we do is based on this figure right here, 21 CFR Part 117. That CFR stands for Code of Federal Regulations, and that's a very thick, very long government publication. If you ever want some good nighttime reading, I guess, to put you to sleep, that's what you need to look for. But this specifically, this 21 CFR Part 117 is specifically related to good manufacturing practices. And you can just see below there, those are some bullet points that have, really it covers the main topics for everything that regarding the facility. So anyway, that's just a reference. I get questions all the time about where do you get your basis and your authority for doing what you do, and that's the answer right there, 21 CFR Part 117. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, no need to look at that. That's just a picture of an insect trap that's clearly needs to be changed and cleaned out, and so that's just an example of something that would not be permittable in a food manufacturing facility. Okay, let's talk about our partnership with CPA quickly. Hal and all the folks down there at CPA are invaluable partners with us. They do many publications. This is one that they did several years ago specifically for GMP training, getting started in food manufacturing business. It has in print everything that basically we're gonna be talking about today in very general terms. If you're interested in pursuing further GMP training, Cornell University has done an excellent job putting this together. It's $50, and I've never talked to anybody who was sad that they went through it. It's an extremely comprehensive course, and well worth well worth your time. Again, UT Extension, this is University Institute of Agriculture's web page. All of the publications that they have are listed. You can do this drop down menu here from Extension Outreach and go down to the publications bar there, and you click on that, and that will give you access to anything that they've done. Okay, let's talk about labeling. Labeling is something that regardless of the permit status or anything else, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act at the federal level requires that every food, for human or for animals for that matter, be labeled. There are 4 things that are called the 4 must-haves. The product name, and that has to be a name. It has to be named something that is easily recognizable and associated with the product. And I'll give you an example. Since Hal's introduced us, if Hal had a fudge that he liked and he wanted to call it Hal's Treats, for instance, that's probably not going to be the best. We're going to advise him not to do that. Now he could call it Hal's Fudge Treats, but the word that's typically associated with that food has to be in the product name. And people like to get creative, and we strongly encourage that, but it has to be something where the consumer can clearly see what it is by the name. Your manufacturer's name and address has to be on there. Phone numbers are not required unless you want to, and also websites are not required unless you want to. But the only requirements is the manufacturer's name, address, and address will be zip code will be in the address. So that's it. You have to have the net weight of the product in English and metric, and don't ask me why that is. That's just one of those FDA requirements. Typically, the metric units is put parenthetically on the bottom of the label. That's the best way. And normally it's English first and metric second, but that's not a requirement. So if you wanted to put, for instance, if you wanted to put your weight of something in grams and then put the ounces in parentheses next to it, that's fine. It's just your preference. Most people put the English weight first. Then it comes down to the complete list of ingredients in order of predominance by weight. That should be self-explanatory. And I do want to talk about declaring allergens as well here. Okay, so if you have one of the big 8 allergens, let me get to a better slide. This is a better slide illustrating the big 8 allergens that are recognized in the United States. If you travel, especially in Europe, there are spices and typically some other proteins that can be recognized as allergens in other countries. And I'll give you an example. I think ginger is an allergen somewhere. Cinnamon, I know, is an allergen somewhere, but and it's recognized on the national level as opposed to in the United States. We have these 8 that are recognized, and the threshold for recognizing an allergen is 0.5% among the general public. So so these are always being evaluated to see if other allergens need to be added to this list. But at this point, we only have 8. Now everybody knows someone that has a kind of a one-off allergy, like to tomatoes or to whatever that is. You can't cover everything. So when you list it on your ingredients, if you have something, and I have an example of this in a minute, if you have something that has an allergen in it, then you have options on different ways to declare that. Let's go back 1 second and see. Okay, so yeah, this is reference to the Food Allergen and Consumer Protection Act, January 1st, 2006. We're going to talk now about this contained statement. This is the preferred way to recognize an allergen. I think I have that slide. Okay, right here. Okay, I think everyone has seen this type statement on a label. may contain, made in on shared equipment, that, made in facility, that. Those are advisory labels, and this is separate from the actual contain statement. So this contain statement would absolutely be required. This particular product contains milk, nuts, soy ingredients, and it's made on equipment that also processed peanuts and wheat. And that's something that would absolutely be required for this. Now these others up here that say may contain or made in a facility that does something else, those are not required, but we give a strong recommendation for that, just because, especially if you're making a product in your home kitchen that doesn't require permitting, or if you're using a shared kitchen, for instance, and you're not exactly sure of the sanitation procedures that have happened before you've gotten there. If someone's been there before you and they were making peanut butter cookies, and you come in and you're making something that doesn't have peanut butter, well, you're not absolutely confident that that residual peanut butter could not get in your product. So this advisory labeling is something that we advise strongly. But again, it's completely up to you whether you do that or not. But down here under the ingredients, the actual declaration is there's no wiggle room there. You definitely have to do that. Now an option, and I don't have it listed here, but it is permissible. For instance, right here where we have, let me find one. Almond butter is a good example. Okay, almonds are an allergen. So you could, in lieu of this contain statement, you could actually just put almond in bold font to indicate to the consumer that that's an allergen, and that's an acceptable way. You don't see it very often, but if you, I just want to make sure everybody knows about that, just in case you have limited room on your label or something like that, where you, for some reason, you don't want to put the contain statement, then that's another option. You can bold that. You can bold that. It'd be the same thing here, because your soy is an allergen as well. So, and milk down here as well. So, anyway, so all right, let's keep moving. Okay, I don't think there's any reason for us to go over this. This is just an example of a label. You can see up here in the corner. Actually, they've got this one. This one's listed reverse of what most of them are as far as the dual weight. See, they have the 453.6 grams, and then the 1 pound or 16 ounces in parentheses about next to it. That's optional. You can do it however you want to, but the dual weight has to be on there. All right, we already talked about that. Okay, in this case, hopefully the ingredients are on the back here. That's very common that they are, but that's one thing that would have to be there. Okay, nutritional facts panels are not a requirement. However, if you're selling to a facility that has that requirement and you want to continue selling through that marketing channel, then you'll have to do nutritional facts. Now, as a small business, if you have less than $50,000 per year of sales, then you're automatically exempt from nutritional facts. The other exemption is if you have sales of less than 100,000 units, that's sales units, and less than 100 full-time employees, you are exempt, but you have to file that notice with the FDA. The difference in this one is there's no notice to be filed. So it says does not need to be filed under this scenario. Under the top scenario, you do have to file that notice. There's no cost to it. It's just a matter of going online and filling out and just informing the FDA that you're exempt from nutritional facts because you fit the criteria. If you do find yourself in a situation that I have it happen not regularly, but it certainly has happened where people have just wanted to know what the nutritional facts were of their product. You've got two options for that. Number one is the more expensive option, is that's just a traditional lab-based, where you send your product off to a licensed laboratory, and they analyze it for you and send back what's in it. Normally that cost it's fairly expensive, $700 to $1,000 or so per product. So for people that just have a couple of products, it wouldn't be so expensive, but it certainly could run into a lot of money as compared to the second one, which is the nutritional database analysis, which is it's a online database that you can subscribe to, and it's fairly inexpensive, and all you do is you just plug in your formula or recipe for that product, and it spits back out what the nutritional analysis will be, and that's an absolute permissible way to do that. And I think I've got some figures here about how much it is. There it is. Okay, nutritional database analysis, $100 to $300, and that's actually probably come down since this first started. And the lab based is about the same. I'd say $1,500, maybe a little bit high, but at least $800 to $1,000 is what's going to cost you per product. So that's just an FYI if that's something that your folks are interested in. Okay, acidified foods. This is something that always comes up. There's a lot of folks in the state that think they can make dill pickles at home and sell them at the farmer's market and not be permitted, and that is not permissible. So let's just talk about that and talk about why. Okay, I'm getting a lot of noise. Is that just me? Can anybody hear that? Hal, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm checking.
Okay.
Let me check and make sure everybody's muted.
Okay.
That may be the issue. Just
Okay.
just a reminder, everybody, if you haven't muted your mic, please check and be sure that it's muted. We may have had some people join late that didn't get that message. All right, I think we're good, Mike.
Okay. And it may have been on my end, but it just, okay. All right. Okay. So let's talk about acidified foods. This is a category that, like I said, there's a lot of misinformation that's floating around. Well, actually, I've got some slides here. The definition of acidified foods is foods that are greater than 10% by weight particulates. That just essentially means it's chunky, greater than 10%. The pH is above 4.6. That would be considered a low acid food. That's the category that the FDA gives it, and that could be essentially anything that you pickle or can. I've got a picture here, and I leave this in here, so forgive me if this is morbid, but I always want to leave this in here because it illustrates how serious that the department takes this category. This is a picture of 10 members, actually 10 fatalities from the same family, and it happened many years ago, but it was a result of eating canned potatoes that were not properly canned, and they got botulism and died. So this is not something that we take lightly. Botulism is still around. You don't hear about it that often, but it certainly hasn't gone away, and so we just do our best to try to mitigate those circumstances to let it thrive. So these are just some general guidelines for acidified foods. Again, typically anything pickled or low acid, just regular canning would fall into this. Must adhere to GMPs. We talked about that earlier. Must be manufactured in a commercial kitchen. This could be a kitchen that you rent, a community kitchen that's a shared situation, or a restaurant that we recognize the inspections of a restaurant, so you certainly can do that while the restaurant's closed. You could have a co-packer, which would mean if you know someone, another company who's making a similar product and they're willing to make it for you, then you can have them do it, and there's actually no permit for you connected to that because you'd be manufacturing under their permit. Typically, this area, this type is typically very expensive. So there's not a whole lot of people that do this that they're coming to farmers markets. Or you can build your own commercial facility. That's extremely common these days. And if anybody has any vendors that they're interested in doing this, send them my way. And we actually provide a consultation service where hopefully we will when we get back to normal, but we will come out and actually take a look at the facility and give them guidelines on what to do and to make that facility meet specifications, and there's no cost to that. So that's something we try to do our best in making available. Okay, additional requirements. There is a one-time educational course. That course is called Better Process Control School, and it's extremely involved. It takes 4 to 5 days depending on the school, and you're tested in every section of these categories. Is gone over extremely thoroughly, and you're tested at the end. So this is a one-time thing, and when you finish, you certainly are qualified to be the authority for someone doing this. It's also that University of Tennessee offers it in person, normally once a year, sometimes twice, depending on the demand. It's also offered. Actually, I thought I had a slide for that. I think I do on down, but it's also offered online. UC Davis does an excellent Better Process Control School online that certainly qualifies as well. So you don't have to attend it in person. The cost for either online or in person, I want to say it's about $700 the last time I checked. I'm not sure I haven't seen one of these offered in the last 6 months or so, but that typically is the cost. So about $700 to take this course. And again, if you're making acidified or low acid canned foods of any kind, this is an absolute requirement. And I'm talking about shelf stable acidified foods, and by that I mean things that are not, there's no refrigeration required. If someone's wanting to make a fresh pickle or a fresh salsa or something like that where its refrigeration is required, then this is not a requirement for making that. All right, let's keep going. Additional requirements: you have to register your facility with the FDA, and again, there's no cost to it. You just have to get on their radar that you're a food manufacturer. And this is Form 2541, and actually University of Tennessee, Nathan Miller at UT Institute of Agriculture is very good about helping people, and that's something they do all the time is help folks get all their FDA registrations in order. Okay, your processing authority in Tennessee, we use, like I said, the University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture. Dr. Mark Morgan is our process authority up there, and what would happen if there's a question, if you want to use a process that's already been approved, that's fine. If there's a question about the process that you believe your actual product will need, then that sample will need to be sent to Mark Morgan at UT, and they'll just basically dissect it and analyze it and send you a written report specifically about your parameters and your cook times and temperatures and things like that. Okay, I just talked about who the processing authority is. Okay. And they also would help you to file that process with the FDA once that process is approved. So you work with them, they set you a process, and then that process will need to be filed with the FDA. And again, this is similar to the registration, but it's a different. This this one, number 2, is talking about your specific facility. Number 4 is talking about your process. Okay, that's the actual form that that needs to be filed, and it is specific to your product. So in other words, if you had multiple types of product, not multiple flavors, but multiple types, then this is going to be specific to each one. Okay, of course, record keeping is very, very important. We say that if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So, and that's pretty much the way the FDA looks at that as well. So accurate record keeping for acidified foods is extremely important. Okay, here's just an example of records. Okay, this is a publication that the UT Extension did for us. This is found online, and this is just a bifold publication that's very straightforward bullet points how to how to get permitted. Okay, extra FDA resources and guides. Okay, well, let's keep going. I haven't seen any chats come through. Any questions?
Yeah,
a lot of times we have questions about that.
Yeah, there's one question, Mike. Question was that Cornell's course fee, they listed on their site as being $200.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm assuming that has gone up. Do you know any more details about that?
I don't, but that would be great. Yeah, I haven't looked at that. I mean, if that's a current, it may be that with the popularity of online, they've been able to do that cheaper. So
no, I think okay. So your slide said that it was $50.
Oh, I'm the GMP one. Okay, so yeah, I thought you were talking about the UC Davis, the Better Process Control School. Okay, yeah, it certainly could have gone up. Yes.
Okay. Not two different trainings that you're aware of.
No, it's not. It's not two different trainings. But again, that is not a requirement. So we talk to a lot of people that just want as much information from for GMPs as they can get. Typically, it's not at the level of folks coming to farmers markets, so we may not even be talking about them, an appropriate thing here. But we just want to make sure that people have as many resources as they can. Right. So yeah, that I may have. Yeah, I haven't seen that $200 price, but they certainly may have gone.
And did you? Okay, so you mentioned the UC Davis online course on better process control. Someone asked if we could provide a link for that, so we'll try to get that and put that in the chat box. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I can track that down for you.
Okay, so it's been put in the chat box now. So thank you, John, for putting that in there. Okay.
Great.
I think that's all the questions so far.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. Well, let's go to formulated acid foods then. This is another extremely popular category. I've got a definition for it here somewhere, I think. Foods with a natural pH of less than 4.6, normally in the 3.3 to 3.5 range. Excuse me. Typically, it's just smooth products. Example would be barbecue sauce, mayonnaise, marinades, salad dressings, things like that. The big difference in these two products is that there's a natural pH. This 4.6 threshold is established by FDA, and pathogens cannot grow in significant numbers when your pH is below this. So that's why we use this number. And when you get down to the 3.3, 3.5 range, certainly the product is much more stable than anything that would be a higher pH. So for that reason, we don't require a lot of the things that we require for acidified foods. And I think I have a slide on that. Here we go. Okay. We still recommend a review of product formulation, but the sending the product off and having a process authority, dissect it and analyze it for you is not a step that's required here. A lot of people want to do it, but it's certainly not a requirement. You do have to adhere to your GMPs, and it does have to be manufactured in a commercial kitchen. So just because it's not in the high risk category, it still has to be done in a commercial kitchen because it does fall in a moderate risk. You do not have the additional requirements. You can voluntarily submit your FDA review if you like, but it's not required, not a requirement. Okay, here's a publication similar to the one before UT Institute of Agriculture did for us, and again, it can be found on the website. All right, we've got a lot of confusion here about this one. Let me just talk about cottage food, the cottage food industry. Actually, we had a law in place for many years that where we were going into kitchens and actually inspecting kitchens and permitting those. And we got to the point though where it just seemed like that it made a lot more sense just to try to repeal that law and make it where you could actually manufacture non-potentially hazardous products in a home kitchen without any kind of oversight or permitting. Just because we were in the home once a year, and that visit was always announced, and it just it got to the point where we didn't feel like we could trust our results because we had to call 2 or 3 days before we got there, and certainly the pet could be removed from the kitchen. You could get the cats off the counter and clean the place up, and then the minute we leave, I open the door and the pets come right back in there. So it didn't seem to tell us a whole lot. So we felt like we should make this something that people could do without an inspection. So that's the catalyst for removing that law. This applies only to non-potentially hazardous foods, and I'm sure some of you have questions about what is potentially hazardous. So jot those into chat if you like, and we'll certainly just talk about those. Again, it's a good question. We don't have a list of non-potentially hazardous foods just because the list is changing all the time. Typically, we don't take things off the list, but we're regularly evaluating products and their potential to be harmful to a consumer. And if the potential is not there, then we add them to the non-potentially hazardous list. But in general, the definition are just foods that would not support the growth of bacteria that can be harmful. You hear it referred as pathogenic bacteria. That's what that's talking about. Okay, we just said we don't have a list of hazardous foods, but there is a wide range, or we don't have a list of non-potentially hazardous foods, excuse me, but there's a wide range of products that fall within that, and you can contact me and we can discuss why certain things fall in certain areas and other things don't. Okay, so I talked about the law being repealed. This is the time, April 2017, that eliminated the permit requirement by the Department of Agriculture. Now, this did not eliminate the requirement of labeling. So the Tennessee Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act requires that any food be labeled, and this is outside of the actual manufacturing laws. Okay, and again, this is just kind of a rehashing of what we talked about at the first, just with label requirements. And again, I can't stress enough because so many baked items are done in home kitchens, that please advise your vendors to be extremely diligent with their allergen declaration, because could be life or death in the right circumstances. So that's not something you want to play around with. This is not a requirement, but the University of Tennessee still offers the online domestic kitchen course. It's $75, and it is a tested course, and it takes normally about 4 hours to complete, and I have never talked to anyone who was not happy that they took the course. It's very practical. It's just good information. So we keep this available as an option for farmers market managers, even though we don't have a permit connected to at-home cooking now for this category. This is certainly something that you could require, and a lot of farmers market managers do require that. So if someone comes up and says, hey, I want to start bringing bread to the farmers market, you certainly are within your rights to require this online course. Or we actually offer it in person if the demand's there, with a 10-person minimum. And we charge, the University of Tennessee charges $100 for that, and that's an 8-hour hands-on course, 1-day course. So that's your options there as farmers market managers to give you a little bit more control on your vendors. I do have some farmers market managers that even go to the length of making kitchen visits, and certainly would say that's a good thing. I know it's getting more popular that farmers market managers are actually making trips to the garden, so where the produce is grown. So you could certainly extend that to the kitchen where the non-potentially hazardous product is made, certainly. So, okay, let's keep going. Okay, other food types. Retail meat sales. This should be self-explanatory. Farm-raised meat is extremely popular. The big condition here is that your vendors will need to have your animals processed at a USDA facility. They'll need to transport it in a manner that's where it's kept hard frozen. The gold standard here is an inverter connected to the truck or the vehicle, and that's by far the preferred way. You cannot refreeze the product. So if someone has the meat out at a farmer's market and it's just as a sample, if it's thawed, it's not something that can be sold. They'll just need to take that home and have that for dinner, I guess, or just get rid of it. Now, we do not allow just ice as far as transportation. Ice in a cooler is not an acceptable way. So really the only acceptable ways are freezer with an inverter or dry ice. So that should be self-explanatory. And we do require a retail meat sales permit from TDA, and that's something that I can get you information on if you would like. It's an extremely easy inspection to go through. Basically, it's just an inspection of your dedicated freezer on site where you're holding the meat, and it needs to be done the freezer needs to be located in a cleanable space and that you control. It does not have to be in your home. It can be in an outbuilding or some other space that you control, but it does have to be in a cleanable space. Okay, these are just examples of retail requirements. You've all seen these on when you bought meat in the store, so I don't think there's any reason to go over those. And how we'll make this available to participants, correct? The slides?
Yes,
Okay,
we'll make the slides available and the recording. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
In the next few days, we'll have those posted to our website.
Okay, great. So you'll have a copy of this if you need need to ask anything else. Okay, this is another publication that UT did for us, outlining what you have to do to get this permit. So it's very straightforward, and you can find that on their website. Okay, this is something USDA actually has a small poultry exemption, and this is extremely confusing. So I want to make sure we're thorough on it. This actually allows. I'm going to highlight this number right here. If you have less than 20,000 birds per year that you process, and I'm just talking about the producer or grower, then they can actually slaughter those birds and sell them really any way they want to. They're completely exempt from inspection. Now, they do have to follow general sanitation guidelines. So it's one of those situations where there's not going to be an inspector looking over their shoulder all day when they're doing this, but they are always open to USDA surprise inspection. Now, I've never heard of the USDA coming onto a farm and inspecting this size producer, but they tell me that they're going to start doing that. So it's one of those situations where you need to maintain sanitation correctly, and just always be ready for someone from the USDA to show up and check you, because if they show up and you're not doing it correctly, then they certainly could force you to stop. So, but you can sell this to really, like I said, anybody: consumers, hotels, retails, restaurants, institutions, etc. Labeling is the same requirement. You have to have your processor name, which would be just your name, your address, the net weight. This is very important here. The statement exempt PL 90-492. PL stands for public law. And what this does is when an inspector, say a retail inspector, goes into that supermarket or that restaurant where you're selling this product, they look on there, they see that there's no USDA stamp, but they see that this statement is on there. It tells them that you're operating under this 20,000 bird exemption that the USDA has established. So this is extremely important to put that on there, as well as safe handling instructions. And please, if that's not clear, type a question into chat, and we'll talk about it further. Okay, exemption provisions. These are straightforward. Healthy poultry operated or processed under sanitary conditions. It's not misbranded, is identified as exempt, and its product as exempt product and label. And an example of misbranding really would be, really about the only thing that I can think about would be you put the incorrect weight on it, because you do have to, right here, you do have to weigh that product, and if the correct weight's not on there, then it's considered misbranded. Okay, here's some more exemption provisions. You can only operate under one exemption during the calendar year, which is a non-issue for most people. It cannot bear the official USDA mark of inspection because it's not being inspected. These products cannot move interstate, so they can't cross state lines. So the only people that could participate in this kind of exemption would be one who is only selling in the state where they raise their birds. Process no more than 20,000 birds in a calendar year. Okay, so hopefully that's straightforward. Again, type in chat if it's not, and we'll talk about it. Okay, dairy products. Let's talk about raw milk before we do anything else. Raw milk is extremely well, it's a hot topic, and it's still officially against the law to sell raw milk for human consumption. Now, everyone knows the options to either sell it under what we call herd share or cow share, where you excuse me, where you're actually selling shares of your herd or your animals to the people who are buying your milk. And so essentially they're not buying milk from you, they're buying your time to milk their animal or their part owner. And I know that sounds like I'm getting into semantics, but that's the way the law says, and it indicates that that there's nothing preventing a person from drinking raw milk from an animal that they completely own or partially own. So that's where, and it's just a loophole, and it's right now it's open. It seems like we always have legislation. We just had some this last year that came up and was voted down. I think it may have been shelved, I'm not sure, but it actually was introduced to get rid of this loophole, and it was not passed by our legislature. So until that's passed, the loophole is still there. Now the other way to sell raw milk is to label it for pet food only, or not for human consumption. And if you have vendors wanting to do that, then they have to be registered as a pet food dealer. So they have to jump through a hoop there to get that inspected as pet food. Now, Now, outside of raw milk, well, actually, there's one exception. We've got it listed right here. The raw milk hard cheese, if a cheese is aged 60 days or more, certainly it would not be considered raw milk cheese. You could call it that, but it would be something that would be permissible to be sold and permitted. But the key there is that the cheese must be aged at least 60 days to get rid of that water activity. Outside of that, any milk that is sold or any dairy products that are sold at your market would have to be from a pasteurized source and fully permitted by the Department of Agriculture. Okay, eggs. We have this this question a lot. There's no permit required if your personal flock is under 3,000 birds. Must be from your own flock and no distributors. So in other words, if you're buying eggs from an outside source and wanting to sell those, that is not permissible. So you cannot do that. Everything that you have has to be something that your own flock produced. You have to sell them cleaned and sanitized. They must be in unused containers. So see this container right here, everybody always wants to recycle egg containers, and that's not permissible. You do have to put your name and address, like it looks like this one may be right there, but your name and address has to be on the labels or on the package somewhere. It can be in a just a sticky, a label, or however you want to get there, or it can be handwritten for that matter, but it just has to be on there where the eggs came from. Also, the word unclassified right here has got to be on there, and what that indicates to the consumer is that what's in this container will be a variety of sizes, and it also will be a variety of grades of the yolk, because the classification indicates that what size the egg is, and the grading indicates the condition of the yolk. And you can see right here, this is a good example of a package here because it says clearly ungraded and unclassified. So that tells your consumer that when they open that package, they're going to get right here. They're going to get a mixture of sizes, colors. It's just straight from the farm eggs, and not similar to the eggs that you would get in the grocery store. So we always have questions about that. But again, the law says must be unused containers. And again, everybody always gripes that containers are expensive, and I know they are, but consumers nowadays are used to paying a premium for farm eggs just because they realize that there's just more money involved in generating those. So $6 a dozen is not unusual. I've seen $8 a dozen. So it depends on your area, but certainly encourage your vendors to pass that saving or pass that expense on to their customers. Excuse me. Must be stored at 41 degrees or less. Okay, let's keep going. All right, honey. There's no permit connected to inspection required if you produce less than 150 gallons a year, and that's a lot of honey. A gold mine or a home run, I should say, I guess, for a hive of honey is about 7 pounds or so. 6 to 7 pounds is an absolute home run. So that's a lot of honey. So if you have anyone producing more than that, they need to be inspected. It needs to be labeled clearly what it is. If just indicate, again, this is a good example. This one we have out here, this is just pure honey with no comb in it. If you had comb in it, you would have to indicate that on the label. Also the name, address, and the net weight. And honey is actually weighed, or it's measured by weight, not fluid. It's just one of those industry standards that's done. So in other words, you would just measure your honey by pounds and not fluid ounces. And we do have a newly defined standard of identity, and you can get this in the TCA, Tennessee Code Annotated. That's indicates the Tennessee law right here in the chapter, and it gives you all details about the new standard of identity. Okay, we have a few molasses folks all over the state. Molasses is unlike honey. We don't view molasses in the same way as honey, just because there's a cooking process and it has to get to the point where enough water is taken out where it will not support any pathogenic activity. So therefore it does have to be inspected by the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. It is considered a low risk food. It's not a non-potentially hazardous food, but it's a low-risk food. So it's in our lowest risk category, but we do require an inspection, and it has to be done in a commercial space. Okay, fresh cut, shelled produce and nuts. Our definition of a manufactured food is that, I'll give an example. Something, if you're only selling tomatoes. You just pick the tomato off the vine and you're selling it, and the only knife that is used is cutting it off the vine, then there's no permit connected to that. If you're changing the form of that tomato, either in a physical way, which would be heating or freezing, cooking or freezing, physical, that'd be physical, mechanical way, which would be cutting, slicing or dicing, or chemical, which would be pickling. If you change the form of that product in one of those three ways, it's considered a manufactured food and has to be done in a commercial kitchen space. And here's the criteria for that. The biggest thing is that it has to, well, I just said it has to be done in a commercial kitchen, and it needs to be inspected, and it needs to be temperature controlled as well. Okay, weights and measures. Anything that's sold by weight in Tennessee, this is the Tennessee Weights and Measures Act, has to be weighed on a certified scale. I think I have details about that. Okay, their annual TDA inspection is $25, and that will cover up to 5 scales. So it's becoming popular that if you have multiple vendors in your market that want to get their scales certified, just bring them to the market one day, and you can give Ed Coleman a call down here or get in touch with him, and they it's a very efficient way of his time to send an inspector there and just certify as many people at the same time as they can to get their scales permitted. Another option is the farmers market itself can buy a scale and make it available to your vendors, or vendors could just go together and buy one scale. When you're selling product by weight, you don't actually have to own the scale that you're using. You just have to have access to a scale. So we do our best to try to make this as user friendly as possible. At the same time, we're making sure that consumers are getting what we say they're getting, what you say they're getting. So if you're selling a pound of tomatoes, they're getting a true pound of tomatoes. Now there are certainly other ways that you can sell product. By the piece is certainly acceptable. By the container is acceptable as well. So it just depends on how you sell. Okay, and the scale right here is the big acronym you need to see. That's the NTEP. Any scale that would be something that you could get permitted is going to have this logo on it, the NTEP logo, National Type Evaluation Program. Okay, pet food has got to be permitted as well. Pet food and treats have to be inspected and permitted. I'm certainly not the best resource for this as far as questions. I will tell you that in many cases, the pet food labeling law is much more stringent than the human food labeling law is. So Mark Powell is their ag inputs administrator, and he will be able to answer those questions for you. And there's his information right there. Okay, and let's see what time we're at. I guess we're right at an hour. So this is my information. If you have a question about anything, just get in touch with me, and I can get your vendors the appropriate information to get the process started, or just walk through what they're doing, and hopefully we can answer those questions. And here's Nathan Miller's contact. And actually, I don't have Mark Morgan on here, but Nathan is probably the best contact at the University of Tennessee for any kind of process analysis or anything like that. All right. That's all for my part of that one. Okay, Hal, you got anything come up?
Yeah, a couple of questions, Mike. One is, what about rendered pork fat? Can that?
Yeah.
Does that have
Yeah,
to be?
that's considered a meat. I mean, any part of the animal is considered meat. So if someone is rendering pork fat, it would have to be done. It couldn't be done from their own animal. In other words, if they're slaughtering their own animals, and I'm just trying to think of any other scenario that would be possible, but you know, if someone's slaughtering their own animal and rendering the fat, that's not something that could be sold unless that process was done in a commercial space, and that certainly could be done. But again, it would have to be done in a commercial space, because it's considered. One thing I didn't make clear probably is anything with meat, or that's considered meat, is never on the non-potentially hazardous list.
Okay, so you can't just do that on your farm or in your own kitchen. That's got to be done in, as you said, a commercial space, or like a USDA inspected facility.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And it would have to come from a USDA inspected animal. In other words, so you couldn't. It would not be permissible we would never permit someone to render their own lard and come, you know, from an animal that they have killed themselves.
Right.
And so I know that's that's a tough one, because you know it happens all the time where people are making, you know, we get pork skin questions all the time. We get certainly lard and tallow questions all the time. But as far as the USDA is concerned, any part of that animal is considered meat.
Okay.
So if you go to the store and buy a tin of lard, it's going to have a USDA inspection shield on it. So that's just their guidelines.
Right. Okay. So that's the way it needs to be sold at a farmer's market as well.
Absolutely. Yes, that's right.
So another question was a comment that their local TDA weights and measures person said that they were getting away from certifying scales. I've heard of that. Have you heard of anything on that, Mike?
No, that's news to me, and I appreciate you, whoever brought that up. I appreciate you tell me that, because that's an educational opportunity. I haven't heard from that, so I'll find out. And any other detail? They just said they're getting away from permitting scales. That's the question.
Yeah, from certifying scales, but that they could still check them. I've not heard this either. I would say that we'd have to go with whatever is in print right now, that inspecting scales and permitting them is a requirement.
Yeah, that's all we have to go by, and that would be big if we're not doing that. I'm not sure that was maybe communicated or interpreted correctly, but I certainly will find out. I think that would be big news if we stopped doing that.
And another question is, what about selling cooked meat at a market?
Yes. Cooked meat would be, and I'm assuming they're talking about just packaged, you know, cooking anything, you know, sausage patties or whatever, and packaging it up, as opposed to cooking something on site. And so I should make that designation, I guess. If someone is cooking something on site, just say they have a grill there and they want to set it up and cook hamburgers and sell hamburgers to your farmers market folks coming by, that's covered by the county health department. So you'd need to check, because that's considered, it's considered just like a food service application, and not considered a manufactured food. Now, if somebody is bringing packaged product to your market that they have prepared somewhere else, and it's fully cooked meat, that would have to be done in a commercial kitchen space, certainly, to do that. But they would have to start with a USDA inspected piece of meat. In other words, they couldn't sell something at your farmer's market that they have slaughtered on their farm. It would have to be from what we would call an approved source, which would be have a USDA shield on it.
Okay, so if they get that meat from an approved source, from USDA inspected product, Mike, they still would not be able to cook that meat in their home kitchen and sell it at a farmer's market, right? It would have to
absolutely not. You're absolutely right. No,
I just wanted to be absolutely sure we were clear about that.
Yes, that would have to be done in a commercial kitchen space, and with an approved process. So that in no situation, no circumstance would allow that to be done in the home kitchen.
All right. So another question is, how can someone sell rabbit? I assume they're talking about rabbit meat.
Yeah, rabbit is there's two ways to do that. Actually, rabbit is covered under it falls under what they call the non-amenable species, which is a fancy way for USDA to say they don't have a normal inspection guideline for rabbit. And so when you do that through USDA, they actually charge you for inspection. The other way is that the FDA is the official entity that's responsible for rabbit. So I just need to walk you through those guidelines. So when you have rabbit producers, just have them get in touch with me, and they will need to get their facility registered with the FDA. And the FDA does not do regular on-site visits, but it's similar to there's a lot of confusion with this one, because people think it's just like the poultry. It's not, because poultry is covered under USDA, rabbit's covered either under USDA or FDA, and most people go FDA just because it doesn't cost them anything to do that. And the FDA at this point does not have the manpower or the expertise to come and inspect that ongoing. However, you are required to have that facility registered with the FDA. So they have to know that you're doing it and where you're doing it and the conditions that you're doing it.
And that's going to have to be following all the commercial kitchen requirements, correct, Mike?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Under FDA inspection, and even if they only inspect every once a year or ever so often, it's still got to follow all the requirements for food safety and for that facility and everything.
Absolutely.
In your home kitchen.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, you could not. It would have to be an inspected space. Absolutely.
Okay, there's another question here. What are some examples of cottage food industry products?
Well, in general, and that's a good question. I didn't expand on that as much as I should have. In general, it's products that are very high sugar or high salt, and very low water. Typically, all baked goods fall in that category. All breads for sure. If like a cheesecake would not, because it requires refrigeration. A good way to think about it is any kind of baked product that requires refrigeration for storage would not fall in that category. So if you had just say a cheesecake would not fall in that category, but a traditional pecan pie that's stable at room temperature would fall in that category. So that's kind of your delineator. Most dry products, dry spice mixes, roasted coffee, cookies, fudge, candies of most kinds, and I'm hesitant to make complete generalities because I don't know all the different recipes that people use. So if something is questionable, you just need to call me and we'll work it out and we'll determine. But but most recipes for baked goods, if it's not refrigerated, are going to fall in that category.
Okay, I think that gets all of our questions that we've had, Mike. So if you want to go on to your next presentation, we'll continue monitoring this chat box. We may get some more questions as people kind of think about what you've said, and I'll let you know if we have some more questions.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to attempt to make this change, and I'm technologically challenged here. You know that, Hal. So I'm going to give it a shot. So here we go.
You're no more challenged than me, Mike. So I think you're doing well.
And I don't see the one that I had. Where I may have to get out of this and open back up. So
yeah, I think you'll need to do it to stop sharing first.
Okay.
To stop sharing.
All right.
And then choose sharing and share the screen that you've got with the other. I assume you already have the other presentation up. Is that true?
Yeah, I thought I did, but I don't see it now. So I need to pull it up. So I'm going to.
Yeah, you'll need to pull it up first.
Do that. Well, how do I have you? You still here?
You still have me. We can't see your slides yet. So first of all, you stopped sharing.
Yeah, I did that.
And you probably exited out of that presentation.
Yeah, hang on a second. I'm trying to get back to that. So all right, Hal, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble here. Let me
That's all right. Just make sure that you've completely exited that PowerPoint that you had, and then that you have your new one pulled up.
Yeah, I thought I had done that. I'm having trouble finding how to even get this one off the screen at this point. Hang on, let me.
Well, if you stopped sharing it, then when you click share, if you've got your new one up, it's okay if you've got both of them running, but you've got to have your new one already up and running before you can share it.
Yeah, I thought it was up and I can't find it now. So
Okay.
That's my problem.
Well, we've had a couple of more questions. If you want to take those, but if you want to keep trying to get your presentation up, I understand that as well.
Okay, let's just try to get this up if we can.
Okay.
And I tell you, no, go ahead and give me the questions, Hal, and I'll keep working on this.
Okay. So we've had a question about elderberry syrup.
Yeah.
Is that required to be done in a commercial kitchen?
Yeah, it is, and elderberry syrup is extremely popular. But the reason it is there's a cooking step involved, and we just have to make sure that the finished product is at the point where the water activity is low enough and the packaging is appropriate to not to support any pathogen growth in that. So yeah, that definitely would require a commercial kitchen.
Okay. So we've had another question about scales, and we're going under the assumption right now that we are required to have those scales permitted because we haven't seen anything in writing to the contrary.
Right.
But, so the question is, as a farmer's market manager, do they have to go through each vendor's scales to make sure they are certified?
They should, yeah, yeah. I mean that's up to you. If I was a farmer's manager, I certainly would make that designation. Yes.
One thing we did a couple of years ago with the uh, Nourish Knoxville Winter Market and the Nashville Farmers Market, we actually set a day, got the farmers market manager to pick a day that they would like for TDA to come out there and do an inspection of several vendors' scales at the same time. So we did one in Nashville, we did one in Knoxville, and that worked really well. We were able for them to get, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 vendor scales certified on the same day.
Right.
So if you're interested in doing something like that, you might contact us at the Center for Profitable Agriculture. We can help you make that contact to the right person. Or Mike, you may have another suggestion on that.
No. I mean, I think that's a good one.
Assuming that that's still required, I'm sure they'd be very happy to come and do that, because that makes real efficient use of their travel and time, and you can get a lot done on a single day.
It does. Yeah, it does. Okay.
We're seeing something that you have pulled up there, Mike. It says auto save off.
Yeah, I just got out of that. Let me just get back into it here and see what I can. It's just not letting me pull up that. I tell you what, Hal, I'm going to do like I did before. I'm just going to get out and jump back in, and hopefully I can reboot it. So give me just a second here if you can.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Hal, you got that?
Yes, sir. That's good. Thank
All
you.
right. Sorry, forgive me for the problem there. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you for anybody who hung in there with me. Okay. So you can see this screen, 2020 Farmers Market Bootcamp.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good, good. Okay, all right. So what this is a general overview of the Pick Tennessee Products marketing campaign or platform, and also TAEP funding and AEF or Agricultural Enterprise Funding. I'll give you updates on those. Okay. These are three resources that we can provide vendors for both marketing and for financing of food fiber or fuel, for that matter, enterprises. Pick Tennessee Products, and we're actually taking a look at this logo right now. We typically revamp this logo every few years, and we're kind of taking a look at that right now. This one's about 10 years old now, but the Pick Tennessee Products was created in 1986. It's a free program. I don't know if hopefully you're all familiar with it. I strongly encourage your vendors to participate in it. It's a very simple application process. The biggest thing is that the product sold to use the logo needs to either be made in Tennessee or grown in Tennessee. And so an example of that would be if you're making fudge, and you're clearly not buying your cocoa or your sugar probably from a Tennessee farmer, but you're making it in Tennessee, it can certainly be a Pick Tennessee product. Or another example might be if you're growing tomatoes and you're having them shipped out of state for a co-pack kind of situation, but the finished product is your tomatoes and they're grown from Tennessee soil, then that would apply. So, or it would be okay to use the logo for that. So that's the two conditions there. So please, if that's not clear, type into chat and we'll cover that. Here's your numbers on the participants, and this participant list is going up. We've got about 2,500 right now, but well, actually this is probably this presentation is a couple months old now, so I'm sure we have more participants now, but 10,000 plus products. We also have social media that we participate in: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We participate in the Farm and Restaurant Alliance. And this is something that hopefully your vendors understand and know that we can be the facilitator of connecting partners between the producers and the chefs and the restaurants that are making the products. Mobile app as well. This is a very easy one. This is specific to areas. So with the GPS mapping feature, so if you have this application, you could go to a certain area of Tennessee and hit on it, and it'll tell you, just say you're looking for strawberries in that area. It'll identify the strawberry patches that are where you are. So this is an extremely popular application for our folks looking for Tennessee products. Okay, the Ag Enterprise Fund we're only in our second year of this. This was actually voted by the legislature or approved by the legislature a couple of years ago, specifically for, and I didn't do let me find my laser pointer here. There it is. Okay, this is specifically for distressed and at-risk counties. You can see the distressed are marked in the darker, kind of the darker pink color, and the at-risk are the pinkish color. This fund, that really there's three criteria that if you're located in one of these areas or adjacent to one of these areas, and here's a good example. This is Henry County right here. Well, if someone in Henry County is applying for this, chances are that they would be suitable to get it because they're completely surrounded by at-risk counties. So that they would stand a real good chance of getting this money. But what this money is, it's matching funds, and it'll match 25% of your project. And it's for, actually see if I have another, okay, here's our eligibility. We have Any ag businesses, any food forestry, farmers, nonprofits, or local governments even can apply. And the product categories are right here, is that it must increase your farm income, must increase access to markets, must increase your capacity. And this could be that what capacity means is you're increasing your capacity by buying more local products or by providing jobs for people. So those are the big categories. And if you're located in a distressed or at-risk county, then you definitely are ahead of the game to try to get some funding. Now, as opposed to TAEP funding, there's no limit, there's no cap to this. There's been several producers that have applied for projects and been awarded $50,000 up to $100,000. We've also had, but again, those are pretty large projects. So a $50,000 project would be something that would help fund the $200,000 project, because that'd be 25% of the total. A more reasonable one and practical one is that there's many people, for instance, if you wanted to build a commercial kitchen on your property and you have a building there, excuse me, that you think is suitable, and it's going to cost you, $30,000 to do it, then that certainly would be a suitable project. And I strongly encourage you to apply for it. It's a 2-page application. And again, it's a 25% match. So if your project is, just say $20,000, because the math is easier, your project is $20,000, then we would award you $5,000 toward that. And that's a grant, not a loan. So that's just a check that you get to help you offset the cost of this project. So if you have any more specific information about that, please let me know. This is reviewed on a quarterly basis, as opposed to the TAEP, which is done yearly. This is quarterly. And so strongly encourage you to apply. If there's a question about it, apply, go ahead and apply, and just, or contact me to talk about specifics about what could qualify and what couldn't. So I know that's kind of an ambiguous example of that, because there's a lot of we're trying to make changes to this fund ongoing, just because we want to make it as easy as possible to access financial resources for farmers who need to grow their business and don't have the funds to do it. So we're really trying to help people out as much as we can. It is an application process, and it is competitive. We've awarded a lot since it started. It's reviewed quarterly. I'm not sure that this April 1st, amid all this chaos we're going through, I don't think that we probably hit that one. So at this point, we may be putting all that category into a summer review. That's probably still up in the air. It has to be centered around a project, and it must include your business plan, your budget information, and your proof of financing the remainder of the product. So in other words, if you have a $20,000 project and you're asking us for $5,000, then you have to show proof that you have the ability to finance the other $15,000. And please write into chat if there's any specific questions about that. This on the bottom here is the actual AEF information on the website, and there's a place to apply on there as well. Okay, and again, please write down what questions you have, and we'll address those here at the end. Hopefully you're familiar with the TAEP program. It's cost share. The TAEP, as opposed to Agricultural Enterprise Fund, TAEP is more for production agriculture, as opposed to the manufacturing side. For instance, a commercial kitchen build out would never be something that TAEP would pay for. It is a cost share. But like I said, hopefully you're familiar with this program. It's been around for many years, and it allows producers to just really build infrastructure. It helps them to adapt to the changing markets, improve operator safety, farm efficiency, make a positive impact on the community. And again, it's mostly for ag input type things. So for well, actually, it's not paying for barns, but for specific equipment, fencing. It'll even pay for some cattle genetics now, or for livestock genetics, just in general. It'll pay for advertising. It will pay for trailers if you need something to be able to haul your product to market. It just has there's a wide range of things it'll pay for, and I'm not the best resource for it, but I can certainly steer you in the right direction if there's a question about what it will pay for. And here's a little bit of history behind it. It started in 2005, and it just shows, just in general, things that have been added that TAEP will pay for. The maximum on this is not nearly as high as Agricultural Enterprise Fund, but there are many people that are approved. This is not as competitive as Agricultural Enterprise Fund. This fund is more if you have a project and your project meets the criteria, then most likely you will get some money. It may not be everything you asked for, but there will be some money that will be awarded. This one is done. Well, actually, there's a little bit of information about the participation. Since the inception, it's been the number of 57,550 number of projects. This year, excuse me, I'm sorry, last fiscal year, you see the number of the dollar amount that was approved is about $27.5 million that was approved projects last year, and that was among 6,344 projects. So you can just see how that math breaks down. And this is just some general economic information. For every dollar spent, then there's almost $4 generated for the state's economies, and generating 4,654 additional jobs. And we do have different applications depending on what you're doing. And again, if you have a vendor that's questioning which application they would need to go with, then have them contact me, and I'll put them in touch with the TAEP experts and get them that information they need. And that's information about the application B, and for who the producer diversification application is for. And information about just the purpose of TAEP. You can read there about as far as what the priority is, and what in general the kind of projects that would qualify. Some examples of eligible items. High tunnels is one it seems like it's had a big growth in the last few years, just to give producers year-round production. So in other words, if you're thinking about a high tunnel, this it definitely would be a good time to do that. Now, I did hear that the governor had originally approved an additional $7 million to this fund. And I understand in the last few weeks that a lot of those approvals have been withdrawn in consideration of the economic situation that we're in now as a result of coronavirus. So that's the additional $7 million. I don't think it's going to be there, but TAEP as a whole will certainly be there. Okay, there's more value-added items that would be connected to TAEP as well. Here's an example of eligible items that have been paid for. Okay, here's the timeline. As opposed to Agricultural Enterprise Fund, there is a very strict timeline for applications. First 2 weeks of October is the application period for this coming year, and normally that stays pretty consistent. So that will be the same. for 2020. So it would be October 1st through 15th of 2020. And here's your guidance as far as when notification letters go out, reimbursement packs, and then the reimbursement request deadline. Here's information about the application materials. I suggest that, well, just comparing the two, the Agricultural Enterprise Fund application is 2 or 3 pages long. There are some things connected to it, business plans, etc., but it's not that long. This application is extremely long and robust. So if you have vendors that are thinking about this, strongly encourage you. I mean, October seems a fair amount away, but I encourage you to go ahead and look at that application now and start compiling everything that they need to get it into the application and get it complete, get the application as strong as possible and complete to send in by October 1st. And producer diversification coordinator is Boyd Barker. There's his information. So you can contact him if you need more information there. And the grant program, I guess I'll just make that available to you. I don't want to just read it off. I know we've been doing this a long time, but as far as our timing, I think is over. But this is just general information about the grant, about the promotional and retail grant program. But this actually pays. I'm sorry, I thought I was on I was on a different thing. This is actually the $1,000 that's available to farmers markets, to any farmers markets that participate in PIC Tennessee. The only requirement is that you have to be registered as a PIC Tennessee farmers market. You have to be registered on the website. Okay, just let everybody look through that. It's pretty straightforward. Promotion, public use considerations, marketing, retail consideration, EBT processing, etc. Ineligible items would be admin cost. You can just read down the list there. Okay, then there's the website for the farmers market promotional retail grant program. And I probably just confused you because this is actually a different program than what we have available. We actually have $750 available to farmers markets, and the only that's what I was thinking this was talking about, but it's not. The $750 is available to any farmers market for just your general discretionary use, and the only qualifications that you're a part of the PIC Tennessee products. So I'm sure I just confused you about that one. So please let's make sure everybody's on the same page there, and jot down anything, chat anything that we needed to talk about. Okay, contact information here. And actually this one's wrong too. Kyle Hensley is no longer the AEF coordinator. That's a gentleman named Will Freeman, and I can get you Will. It's actually Will.Freeman, William.Freeman at tn.gov, and I'll make sure to get this one corrected as well. All right, Hal, you having questions there?
Yeah, I got a question, Mike. Backing up to the scales a little bit.
Okay.
If the scales aren't regulated according to TDA, would they receive a warning from an inspector?
Yes, absolutely. It would just be a warning. Is, I was trying to think of another word to use, but yeah, the warning it would just be a verbal, hey, did you realize that you need to be need to be inspected. This sale needs to be inspected, and next time I come by, have it done, kind of thing. So yes, it would be a warning.
My experience with them is that they've been really helpful in trying to help you get the scales permitted or certified. And there's certain scales that aren't eligible to be permitted, but they can work with you to help you understand exactly what kind of scales you need and how to go about getting those certified.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah, the NTEP is the big thing. That acronym. That if it has NTEP on it, then it's going to be something that can be certified. Yes.
Okay. So another question was about the grant programs that you mentioned, especially for farmers markets. I think maybe they're a little confused about which one that farmers markets could apply for, not the AEF and not the TAEP, but it was the other one that you mentioned, $1,000. I can't remember what that's called. Farmers market promotion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm forgive me. I was the one that caused that. Can you see this slide that I'm going through right now?
I can. Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, let me go back to that. And I was that's my fault because I created that confusion. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, the Farmers Market Promotional and Retail Grant Program. This pays up to $1,000 to qualified farmers markets for specific reasons. And this is different because we have a $750 payment right now that, again, the only qualification is that you participate, you be a farmer's market with regular hours, and you participate in our Pick Tennessee products. That's the only condition for that. So if you provide that information, you get $750 and it's discretionary. Now this one is different. It pays up to $1,000 and it's specifically for different things. And I've got a slide here, right here. Okay, here's examples of eligible items. If you have a special promotion you want to do, for if you need to print up a banner, or you need to have a radio advertisement, or you need bring in a concession trailer, or you need to print up some brochures, or just any kind of promotional material that you need, or marketing material. You need to buy some EBT equipment, or you need to if you have an on-site refrigeration unit or something like that, you need to get repaired. So that's just an example of eligible items. Now, an ineligible item would be something like salary for someone that was paid, or general office equipment, or if you wanted to buy a golf cart, or pay off debt, or travel, or anything like that, that would be ineligible. But there is in this application, application that we talk about right here, apps must be postmarked, and this year this will be right for 2020 as well. But in this application process, it will specifically ask you what the money needs to go for, and it'll need to be specific. And if it's for something, just say it's for infrastructure. If you need to do something at the building, or have a refrigerator fixed or something like that, then it'll have to have quotes in there from the people who are actually doing the work. So again, this application is something that will need to have some backup documentation with it.
Mike, there's a question. Yeah. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not interrupting what you were saying there.
No. Go ahead.
Well, okay. So someone has asked about the $750 grant, that they thought that the Farmers Market Promotion Retail Grant had been reduced to $750 instead of $1,000.
Oh yeah. We're talking about two different things, and I need to get. This was the last information that I have gotten, but clearly, and I apologize, I'm not the expert with this one. So the reduction was in just the general payment to farmers markets. I know it was reduced to $750 from $1,000. I have not heard where this one the promotion and retail grant program was reduced. But and I just got the updates on these slides here, well, about a month ago or so. So, but that's information that I will certainly get and confirm. Jan Kaiser will be the one that will be able to get that information. I've got her stuff right there. Jan Kaiser is the one that would help you with that.
Yeah, I guess I thought that the $1,000 was reduced to the $750. I didn't realize there were still two different programs. So I'm a little confused on that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, and again, I apologize that I'm not the expert here, but it's still two. Actually, if Grant's on the line, he probably would be. I know if Grant's in a position to, Grant Pulse is in a position to chat, he can probably give us some information here as well. But it's my understanding that there's a retail promotion grant that's still viable at that level.
And do we have any?
Mike, this is Grant here. Rachel Sullivan is handling the Farmers Market and Producer Association grants.
Right, but but that's different from the promotional and retail grant, right? Because this is a TAEP promotional and retail grant.
Oh, it falls under TAEP. Yeah, that might be a Jan Kieser or Erica Alexander question.
Yeah. Well, and
Sorry about that.
Well, and I apologize to everybody for that confusion.
I'm looking online, Mike, at the Tennessee Farmers Market Promotion Retail Grant Program, and it says the grant amount is up to $750. The deadline was December 1st of 2020. So okay, so that's still in the future. But yeah, I know Erica was on the call. Yeah, she's saying also that's a Jan Kieser question. So we'll check with them and put something maybe on our website or probably the best way, like you said, is to get up with Jan. You've got her contact information right there. She can clarify what the application deadlines are and give us more information about that.
Yes, thank you. Well, and please accept my apologies for creating that confusion. That's my fault.
Got your seatbelt on, Mama?
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Mike, for sharing this important information on food safety and food manufacturing, and also about TDA cost share programs. And thank you to everyone who chimed in with comments and questions. We hope that you will join us tomorrow when we'll learn about how the Seymour Farmers Market in East Tennessee organized as a nonprofit. We appreciate you being with us and ask once again if you would please complete the brief online evaluation. That the link is there in the chat box. So if there's nothing else, I'm going to stop the recording, and I'll leave the chat box up a little while in case there are some more comments or questions that come up. And